My name is Dion Lewis. I want to cover a few ground rules and some information before we get started. Restrooms are right outside if you haven't been here, right by the front door on the left-hand side. Today's presentation will be recorded. We will have a point in time where people can ask questions. In doing so, we ask that those individuals make a line over here by the sink and ask your question, so that way the camera guy can get you and make sure that we're able to get your voice through the projection of the mic up front. Today we'll be covering the Housing Trust Fund, Round 3 RFP and application information only. So therefore, if you have any other questions that may be pertaining to something else outside of the RFP or application for Round 3, please feel free to catch us after the conclusion of today's presentation, or you can also email us and we'll follow up with you to answer any of your specific questions. And then, shorter introduction, Dion Lewis again, Housing Trust Fund or Housing and Community Development Department, Housing Trust Fund and CCD. I'm gonna pass the mic around real quick and then we're gonna end up with Jennifer and she's gonna start today's presentation.
Tom Randolph, Housing Development Specialist, Housing Department. The one and only Jennifer Tidwell will grace us with her presentation and I will follow her. Hear ye, hear ye.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone here, and hope you will gain a lot of knowledge here about the trust fund and how it works and how to apply. First of all, I want to talk about our allocation of funding. This round 3, we will have $9 million available for to spend for projects. About 1.7 of that is through our general funding, and then the other 7.7 has to do with the bond that all of you approved. And thank you very much for going to the polls and voting for this most important fund. As I said, this was the source of allocation. 1.2 was through our general funding, and also 7.7 came out of our bonding. I wanted to talk first about the criteria for use for the funding. The council provided an ordinance in which to guide staff in terms of how the funding would be distributed. These are the uses of funds that are available. Affordable rental housing preservation is basically what it says is it's rental housing. The second one is affordable housing creation. That's new construction. And the third is transitional housing and permanent supportive housing. That would be projects that are transitioning from, I would say, homelessness, and they're going into permanent housing. And permanent supportive housing is housing with supportive services around it. And the last category is our homeownership assistance program and retention, and that is to help folks that want to provide homeownership to our residents. So there is an affordability requirement for the Housing Trust Fund. At minimum, we are asking that all projects that receive Housing Trust Fund must restrict at least 20% of their units to be affordable households at below or 60% of median income. And in your packet, there is a table for the median income. And it will show you everything from 30% of median income up to 100% of median income. Although the income limit for the Housing Trust Fund is 60% of AMI. In addition to that, we have an affordability period for the trust fund. That affordability period is 30 years. However, our priorities are that people come in with projects more than more than 30 years. I want to talk a little bit about our priorities. As we're scoring projects and looking at projects, we have a number of priorities. Here again, these priorities have been mentioned through the ordinance by council. Projects serving extremely low income, which is 30% of median income, and projects that meet the 50% of AMI, those are our priorities. Even though you can go up to 60% of median income, we are looking at projects that have that lower AMI. We also are looking for projects that are community land trusts, cooperatives, different models that basically have longer affordability periods. Projects maximizing the affordability housing units with longer periods of affordability. That means that if you guys are wanting to have new construction or rehab, that the number of affordability, the number of units, as many as possible, we want to be affordable. So those that have more affordable units in their project will definitely get a priority. The other priority is dealing with serving families with higher bedroom sizes. We see a lot of projects that come into us that have 1 and 2 bedrooms, and there's very few projects that come in with 3 or more bedrooms for these larger family sizes. And so we would like, in order to get that higher number of units for those larger families, we are prioritizing that as well. And then home ownership and home buyer assistance programs is our last priority. And you can go up to 60% of AMI for that. I wanted to talk a little bit just about our home ownership assistance program. This is some of the things that you might look at when you're trying to do a homeownership assistance program. Projects that align with our housing plans. So the city of Kansas City did a 5-year housing policy, which is still in effect now. And we also did a consolidated plan just recently for all our HUD funding. And we want this to align with our housing project plans. Demonstrate the capacity to provide, experienced staff. So we want to make sure that folks are capable of being able to make the project come to fruition. I wanted to talk a little bit about the changes for those of you that applied last year. There are a few changes. So one of the big things that several of our advisory committee members would like to do is to find out what type of management is at your development, and that management is experienced, that they do not have long-term non-compliance with either HUD or Housing Authority of KC or MHDC. So we are asking those questions on the application this year and asking them to expound on the information about their management company. The other thing is that we saw a lot of neighborhood support letters that were really, really old. And so we have asked everyone to please do not give us any neighborhood support letters beyond 2022. Community engagement is another change. We are asking for you to describe what you are doing as it relates to community engagement and how that works with your project and what neighborhoods you met with. And I'm gonna now have Mr. Randolph come up and he's gonna talk about Section 3 and fair housing.
Thank you, Jennifer. I see some familiar faces in the audience. And good evening to everyone. I didn't have time to stop and get pizza for everyone, but with this diverse audience, I'm quite sure there would have been like 7 different types of pizza to order, so I just said, yeah, we'll just do without the pizza this evening. As she said, my name is Tom Randolph, and when she talked about the neighborhood groups and neighborhoods and so forth, let me just throw in a plug about fair housing. How many of you all know anything about fair housing? How many of you all don't? Everybody knows something about fair housing? We do read these to make sure there's no discriminatory language in your product. Meaning, for example, we read one last year or earlier this year where they're going to put all the low-income individuals in the back of the complex in one building, right? So, and then she talked about the Lord's families. There have been some language that alluded to the fact that they didn't want children living in these facilities. Those are types of discriminatory issues that are in some of the projects. So if you have a fair housing question, I'm the person you can call, or you can call HUD. Go to hud.gov and it has all of the parameters and requirements related to fair housing. I do fair housing training, and if you're interested in that, just call me and we'll do that for you. So page number 9, let's talk about Section 3. As stated here, Section 3 is the business enterprise programs that certify eligible vendors and contractors in the marketplace whose owners have been historically disadvantaged through systemic policies that prevents or exclude them economically or socially by race and or sex, or a combination of these. CREO is our civil rights office, and that CREO means civil rights and equal opportunity for those of you all who don't know. CREO assists certified firms that are available, willing, and able to participate in contracts in accordance with the established city procurement policies. This process is meant to create fairness, access, and equity in all contracts within the city limits of Kansas City, Missouri. So, with that, Section 3, how many of you all have participated in the Section 3 program or project? You have? Sometimes we get complaints about the process, too much paper. So what I provided to you in your handouts is the Q&A that came from HUD. So I apologize that we gave you all that information, but it's real good information to have because it's a requirement if you receive home or CDBG funds that you have a Section 3 plan. All you have to do is call us and we will come and sit down with your organization, or I will, and help you with your MBE, WBE goals, right? Section 3 goals are based on the amount of the contract, and that's in the back of your handout that I gave you. What's important about Section 3 is it gives small businesses, how many small businesses do we have in here? How many of you all Section 3 registered? You are, okay? So it gives you an opportunity to make money, and it's free. The program is free. For example, if a company is interested in a roofer, and they want to use their percentage toward the roofer, they can use you if you are MBE, WBE certified as well. Section 3 will help you, we'll put those numbers together where you can get credit for both. That's a good process. It's real easy. Provide me with your documents as it's stated in here, and we'll get you certified. Well, Tom, how long does it take? Sir, if you sent me your application today online, I can basically have you done in 3 days. I have 10 days to do it, but I can turn you around in 2 or 3 days.
And that's for Section 3.
Section 3, right. I know where you're going. I know Creole has a backlog because a lot of people want to participate in the program. So it takes them a while to get you done, but it's not that challenging one for me anyway. I used to work in that department, and so I know it's a challenge. So I know the ins and outs of how to get you done real quick. Okay? Are there any? We're gonna do questions after. Okay. So that concludes my presentation. And again, the worst thing that you can do is not call us. The best thing you can do is invite us to your meetings with all of your development team, and we'll come down and sit down and talk to you to help you put everything together that you need to make this a smooth process. Okay? Leon?
All right. So the next portion up is covering the application, which is one of the, if not the most important part of the process. And so everyone should have in their packet a hard copy of the application. The application submission is to be done online only. And so I kind of want to walk us through this application so there's a clear understanding of what's required. How many people in here ever applied for, and I'm going back, high school, college, a scholarship? Anybody show of hands? Okay, so you know if you want to win a scholarship, you're going to have to be very detailed and give a lot of good information because it's a competitive process, correct? It's the same thing with this application. The first thing you're going to notice when you read the application information is that pretty much in a nutshell, everything is a required field. All fields are required. And that means even if you put NA for not applicable or a 0 for the dollar signs, if that's a requirement for that particular field. But we need everything to be answered. That includes even uploading documents. Part of this process, and people know but should understand, is that we're going to have a team that evaluates these projects. And each individual will evaluate the information or your project based upon the information that's given. And then we will put this together and come with our average scores, which then that's what we give to the board, and we review the projects individually, and then they have the ultimate decision, right? And so in order for us to, grade your application effectively, we need all this information to be able to give them to say, hey, this project deserves this score, this project deserves another score, and helping them to make a determination towards who they decide to give funding to. And so there's all kind of different things, obviously, and understanding that when you do apply, especially when you're asking for a dollar value, they can meet you at where you at, or they can give you a lower amount, whatever the board determines in this process. So first things first, let's talk about it asks for organization representative completion, or that is completing the application, first and last name. It's going to ask for the organization itself, its name, its tax ID, and its unique entity identifier that you can go to sams.gov and get that information. We're going to need physical mailing address, so that way if we need to contact you for any reason, we can do so by mail. If your organization has a website, we need that information. It helps us dive a little bit deeper to review information about your organization as it pertains to your project. Developer's company name. We're going to flip over to page 2 on the back side. And some of this stuff is just basic information, right? But then we're going to get a little bit more detail. Developer's phone and email address, additional company contact name and information. And that's because a lot of times after the fact, especially if someone gets awarded funds, then all of a sudden they say, hey, well, contact this person now moving forward. I'm like, well, we should have had this information up front, right? Because we build our contact list based upon the information that you give us. So to be able to provide us onesies and twosies, it's kind of hard for us to keep up sometimes. And then we're gonna go into the team member information. This is critical too, because this lets us know, how well versed your team is, and it helps us to identify any gaps within your team. So architects information, and we also want to identify whether or not these firms are M or WBEs. And when we talk about M and WBEs, we're talking about from the city's database. We're not talking about from the state of Missouri. We're talking about these individuals who are registered through Curio KC, and that can be easily found online through Creole's directory. So we ask for all these contact information for your architect, your engineer. Let's flip over to the next page. Your legal team, your management, whoever your general contractor is. And we're gonna flip over another page. And then any other agencies or partners, points of contacts. All information that we do look at, we do highly take in consideration when we are making our decisions or going through our decision process. Why? Because again, having an effective team and being able to see and know their background allows us to know, how prepared you may be to be able to complete such a project. We're going to have some uploads throughout the application process. It asks for first one, attach a certificate of good standing from the Secretary of State. And then it goes into the balance profit and loss statement for the applicant. This covers a 3-year period. And then we go into more detailed information about experience. There's going to be obviously this is going to be a summary of experience. You're going to have another portion of where you can upload your team's individual experience to kind of give us a picture of that, where you can upload pictures and all kind of other things if you want to, so that way we know who those team members are and their experience. And then I know Jennifer talked about the management experience. So when we're talking about individuals who have experience managing housing projects, so to speak, that's what the community had said, that there is a need to know. And I know she didn't dive too deep into it, but part of our evaluation process for the Housing Trust Fund Board is going to be getting community feedback. So these are things that we're going to present and give to not only the board but the community to say, hey, this particular project has a firm that has XYZ experience overseeing housing projects, right? And then they can kind of take that for what it's worth and give their feedback from there. Tenant eligibility, as far as what's the screening process and practices are going to look like. As thorough and detailed as you can be, the better. We're gonna flip over to the next page. It says, are all of your current projects in compliance? All policies and procedures with MHDC, the Housing Authority of Kansas City, and Healthy Homes. So pretty much if your project qualifies for these things, then you're gonna check whatever box is applicable. And then if you do say yes, then you're gonna upload proof of that information. If you do say no, then you'll upload a document and just say it's not applicable. So that's how you get through that. Minority participation. So in addition to identifying who your M and WBEs, as far as what your team is, if you already have a standing relationship or you plan to utilize a particular firm for a particular scope, then you can identify that information right there. Nonprofit inclusion. If any part of your project is includes a non-profit participant. You're gonna detail that information in that particular section. And then we're gonna jump into the details of the project itself. Identifying the name of the project. This is what we're gonna identify it as we present it to the public. And for those that do make it to the next level, present it to council for recommendation for funding. The location of the project, the street address. We want to identify the city council district, if we turn to the next page, the federal congressional district. And then you're going to select as far as from the 4 different categories in which funding will be available. You're going to give a detailed project description. Talk about short and long-term goals, populations to be served, discuss plans for accessibility, energy conservation, and things of that nature. You're gonna identify or articulate demonstration of need for this particular funding and how this project contributes to the city of Kansas City's affordable housing strategy. You're going to talk about your project readiness, which is going to be very, very, very critical to this. Main reason is because we want these funds to hit the streets and hit the projects, and we want projects to be up. So the more ready and prepared you are to utilize the funds for that purpose will also help you greatly. And that includes things like site control, zoning, financial commitments for the projects, things of that nature. And some of these things will be required to show proof of as well. Project schedule, kind of self-explanatory, just kind of, what's your envision of your schedule to be upon full financing of the project. You're going to upload that information. We want all projects to begin within a year of application. There's a new ordinance out that came out effective as of May 31st. All projects have 3 years from ordinance to complete before those funds are brought back before council for possible reallocation. Okay, so being able to contract with the city and get your project started as soon as possible is one of our #1 priorities. Neighborhood impact. Describe how the project is intended to impact the surrounding neighborhood. Let me flip over to the next page. Talk about supportive housing and describing how the housing programs for vulnerable residents and agencies and the services that they will be providing. And then here you're going to identify if the project is a new construction, a rehab, or a little bit of both. The next upload is going to be sustainability information. So just supporting documentation which demonstrates your financial sustainability for the project and the developer's ability to maintain the units at a high standard over that long period of time. Because as we all know, it's 30 years minimum for affordable housing is a requirement. Engagement, describing any type of engagement you've done with this project on any types of level, whether there's community engagement, within the neighborhood, around the city, or whatever that looks like. Community support, describing any partnerships or collaborations or coordination with ongoing efforts to establish or by established organizations serving the neighborhoods. And then you can follow that up with community support letters attaching that information. As Jennifer said, it needs to be current and dated as of no later than 2022. The next portion is going to be going over funding. And within that funding section, we're going to talk about project category, development stages, and it's going to give you, I want to say, up to 4 stages, pretty much saying that, you know, is your project ready to go, or are you more still in the planning, developing stage of things? So you get to select where you are at. You're also going to select whether or not you want a loan or a grant from Housing Trust Fund. There's a lot of applicants who utilize the loan because they're applying for MHDC and LIHTC, and they utilize that for the tax credits. The next page, if you flip over, it says amount of funds requested from Housing Trust Fund specifically, and then the next category is total project budget. Okay. And then from that, because we have to be detailed as the ordinance is detailed towards affordable housing, we want to know, we want you to provide the amount of total project that is going to the housing component only. Some developers come and they give the overall project, which includes some commercial portions of things, and so we want to take out that portion of the scope to get a real good idea of the funds that are going to be utilized for building the housing portion of things only. And that's what we're going to be basing it off of. So if somebody comes and say, hey, I need 10% of $40 million for housing, and you ask them for $4 million, but then your housing portion is only $4 million of your $40 million, then we know we wouldn't give you $4 million because then that'd cover all your housing, period. So we would take the $4 million, and if you ask them for 10%, then you get, $400,000. Then the next part is select and list all sources of funds and or local tax incentive and abatements. We want to know about your capital stack. We want you to be able to show proof of that capital stack. And then the next section says project, budget, and pro forma. And you're going to give, as it says, number 1, a project budget, the overall budget of your project. 2, the pro forma for your project. And then 3, a budget specific for only the housing portion if you have commercial in your project. If it's the same, if it's all housing, then that's fine. You can utilize the same budget from 1. And then again, the proof of the funding award. So if you say, hey, you check off one of the box, maybe you have applied, maybe you haven't applied, but if you have applied and you have been awarded those funds, whether it's through other source of incentive or through an actual financial institution, we need you to upload those proof of securing those funds. Your financial plan and financing commitments will go right there, the next page, upload. The next section is the affordability section. And so in this section, you're going to talk about in detail the different categories of AMI or AMFI. And so you're going to identify, based upon your project, how many units or incomes at less than 30% AMI, which are the extremely low income households. And then it goes all the way up from 31 to 50, from 50 to 60s, from 60 to 80, from 81 to 100. And then you're also going to identify the number of unrestricted units, market rate, so to speak. and then you're going to identify the total number of units between the two. So that way we get our numbers right, and we'll do the math to make sure that we have the right information. You're going to upload in the next section the size of the units, so we have an indication of how big the units are going to be. And you'll indicate the number of the value as far as the rent for studios, for 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. Turn over to the next page, 4 or 5, and then any other rents or specific unit size and cost. The next section is going to be the life of the affordability. You're just going to indicate, again, it starts at 30, so if you don't plan on doing something for 30 years, then you won't qualify. So you start at 30, then 31 to 50, 51 to 98, and 99 plus. The next section, you're going to talk about energy efficiency, indicating any of those programs that you plan to incorporate within your project. The next section is the home buyer assistance and home ownership program. And pretty much, if you're doing housing preservation or creation or transitional, then a lot of this stuff probably will be NA, but if you're not, then fill this out as thoroughly as possible. Talks about, does the proposed project have a home buyer assistance and retention? You're going to describe home buyer engagement. You're going to talk about administrative capacity. What does your home buyer education look like? What's the impact on the neighborhood, the population as far as geographical area, and as far as what type of impact of that you plan to have on housing projects and initiatives. Any type of collaborations, which are partnerships throughout the community on ongoing efforts established by organizations currently serving the community. So that's a pretty short section. And then the last part of all of this is the required additional documents. And so this is to help, number one, is listen all the non-cost affecting things that would be required to contract. So some cost-affecting things would be insurance, right? So we're not going to ask for insurance because we haven't awarded you the funds. That's something cost-affecting. However, in order to contract, you're going to end up having to have insurance, right? So we'd rather get 1 or 2 items from you if you do get selected versus 20 different items that's going to still be required, right? And so, again, key personnel, we're asking for that information. Like I say, you can detail that a little bit differently, pictures and all that good stuff. References, we want to make sure that you have people that support, your prior works in this arena. Drawings and renderings. E-Verify memorandum of understanding. We have provided a link there for you to click and be able to fill that information out. A map showing the location of the project. You can go to Parcel Viewer for that, or utilize any type of digital maps that you may have access to. The city revenue clearance letter, and we need the letter that comes back after you submit your form. So you'll get the form, download the form, fill out the instructions, and you can email it to, I believe it goes to BizCare, but there's an email that you can email it to, or you can walk down to City Hall, first floor, go to BizCare, hand them the completed letter, or the completed form. They will in turn, possibly if they're not busy, they can give you the letter back on the spot. But if they are busy, maybe 3 to 5 business days, you should get back something in the mail. But we need the letter that they give back to you, not the form that you complete out to submit to them. Tax exempt status, IRS letter, if applicable. The registration report filed with the Missouri Secretary of State. Proof of land ownership. Now, this includes the deed, trust, or option to purchase. However, if you read at the bottom there, it says if you are CDBG, home, or environmental is needed, or LIHTC is being requested, please indicate when uploading your blank document, because some of those things will deem you to be ineligible if you already own the property, right? So we don't want to put you in a situation to where you're buying property knowing that you're going down one of these avenues as far as the direction your project is headed, right? So again, do not go out and buy something if that's what you plan on doing. Just let us know that when you upload that document so we know how to treat it. Current bylaws. Next page. List of names and addresses of board members. Non-debarment certification. And we will have that information if it's not already available online. We can give you or upload a copy of what that looks like for y'all to be able to print off, fill out, and upload. In addition to also the employee eligibility verification affidavit. And then last but not least, the applicant or the developer W-9, okay? So all that information is needed. Highly suggest that you get us that information. Now, by all means, because I've already had one person turn in an application, you can turn in all this stuff blank if you wanted to. However, just because you requested funds don't mean you're going to highly, be recommended in this process if we don't have all these other things that support your recommendation, okay? So I highly, highly encourage you to upload all this information. If you have questions, we have a point of contact to reach out to. Nicole is there for that particular reason. So reach out to Nicole Washington. Her information is contact information is on the RFP, and then once you get done completing all this information, the good thing about Incognito, you're able to save drafts of your application so you can come back, gather information as need be. I wanted to give you a hard copy so you can be able to kind of feel through it and collect information as need be. I know if you kind of like me, I like to gather up all my information before I sit down at the computer and crank it all out. And then you, on this application portion, you're gonna check the yes boxes, the agree boxes, understanding that submission of this application does not guarantee approval. Print your name, signature, and submit. Okay, now, applications are due Wednesday, August 30th at 4 p.m. Central Time. It's an online application, so that means we got it set up to shut down at 4 o'clock. So I don't want to get no emails and phone calls talking about something happened, this, that, and it's crazy because I always get the phone calls after 4 o'clock. Of course something happened. It shut down. Now, if you would have hit me up at 3:55, then maybe we have a conversation, right? But you hit me up at 4:02. So make sure you submit those applications, or make sure the person responsible for submitting the application submit those applications. I had that too. Hey, such and such is supposed to do this, and they didn't get, we'll see you around 4. And so obviously you attended one of our sessions. These sessions are here and meant for us to be transparent and giving you information, getting any feedback, so that way we can continue to ensure that this process is a seamless process for not only us as city employees and the board members who are going to make these selections, but as you as the developers and the individuals that are helping to build up these communities for affordable housing. So with that being said, I'm not for sure if there's another one that we need to look at real quick. Oh, yep. So let's talk about a little bit about this housing trust fund timetable. Now, I know people look at this timetable and they like, man, it takes a long time. Well, it does, because I think last round we had about 30 applicants, 30 applications. So, and it's typically around a team between about 5 to 8 of us that are reviewing 30 applications from top to bottom while still doing our daily tasks and jobs, right? And so, what we are trying to do is upon, as you see, we had the RFP release, which was July 24th. And then we had our 2 community engagements events last Thursday and then today. And then that gives you close to 30 days before the RFP closes. And then what we plan to do from the 30th of August to September 25th is to be able to have a high-level overview of information to provide to the public. And this is where that public engagement comes into play. Because between that time and whatever date that is outlined in October, we will be having a public meeting to where the public can give some feedback based upon the high-level information that has been provided. So we'll provide stuff like, hey, what's the project name, the location, what's the project budget, how much is this project asking for, and then some of those other detailed information that the public wanted based upon our workshop or our town hall meeting that we had a few months ago. They'll give feedback, and it's just that, a feedback session. There won't be too much engagement as far as whether the board members or city staff responding to that feedback. We're just going to gather that information, take that back to the scoring table, and then the board members will take what our scores came out with, combined with the public engagement information, and then they'll make the final determinations and recommendations on how they want to spend that $9 million. During that closed session, as you see there, October 24th. And again, that may be one of a couple closed sessions, but that's when it will initiate. And so the goal is to have awardee information made public by October 30th, okay? And then everybody know, hey, you know, if you got it, and we typically send out an email and a letter to let you know whether you got awarded or not awarded, and then from there we go and present it to council and go from there as far as trying to get everybody contracted. So pass this over to Jennifer real quick.
So I had one other comment to make. You also have an application guidance for request for proposal in your hand. I wanted to make sure people understood that in our ordinance, it tells us that we have a maximum amount we can award based on if you're a for-profit or a nonprofit. So on page 3 of that document, it says the maximum award given to each for-profit developer is 20% of the development cost if a loan, 10% if it's a grant. Same thing with a nonprofit developer. They can get 30% of the development costs if a loan, and 15% if it's a grant. So you don't want to go over those maximum amounts. In the last 2 rounds, we awarded around $2 million, $2 million to $2.5 million was our highest awards, just to let you know kind of what the advisory committee has been recommending to council. Is about $2.5 million was the very highest that we awarded. So I wanted to let you know that that's kind of the maximum that they have awarded. Not that they won't go to the maximum, but make sure you don't go over that maximum.